2.
TV party tonight! TV party tonight! TV party tonight! TV party tonight!
We're gonna have a TV party tonight.
Alright!
We're gonna have a TV party, alright!
Tonight! We've got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Everybody's gonna hang out here tonight.
Alright!
We'll pass out on the couch. Alright!
Tonight! We've got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews. Don't talk about anything else. We don't want to know. We're dedicated to our favorite shows.
And tonight, our favorite show is Krypton, brought to you by the good people at the Syfy Network. And I am your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. This is TV Party Tonight, and my guest host with the most, he's the disapproving dad and the host of source material in his own right. He's a man who knows his comic books. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Jesse Starcher. How do you do, sir?
Whew. Well, I certainly don't want to, disrespect the introduction that you gave me, because I do know my comic books. But the DC side of things may be where I need to learn some, I would say, just a few more facts, a few more bits of information. I know Superman, I know Flash, I know the Justice League, but I don't know a whole lot about what comes in the history of these. Now, the good thing is...
It's okay. Neither do the writers on the Syfy Network.
Damn, you stole my thunder. That's exactly what I was going to say. The good thing is that...
I ran in from stage left, shoved you out of the way, and took your notes.
The good thing is that we're treated to a show here that is based off of one of the biggest comic book properties ever, and I don't think you need to know a whole lot when it comes to some TV shows when they do a particular series on a superhero from our comic book, friends from either Marvel or DC. So, I was excited about this show. Let's go ahead and tell everybody what we're going to be talking about tonight.
We are talking about Krypton, as I said before, which debuted earlier this year on the Syfy Network. Let's move that over there. All right, it debuted March 21st, and the last episode, the season 1 finale, debuted on May 23rd. So it was a spring fling, if you will. It was 10 episodes, which you can go back on the Syfy Network app and watch, or however it is you watch TV. It's a DC Entertainment, Warner Horizon television production. It was distributed by Warner Brothers. So this is firmly, and it was produced. One of the executive producers is David S. Goyer, who's responsible for the nonsense that is at this time is the DC Cinematic Universe. Ooh. So blame David, blame Goyer for all the things you hate about DC movies right now. So let's just go back a second, because as you were talking, I was starting to think about the state of Superman TV right now, because it used to be like, I don't know if you ever watched this show, but there used to be a little show starring Dean Cain, and it was called the Adventures of Lois and Clark. Mm-hmm. And they didn't really deal with, from what I remember, granted, I was a little kid when the show was on, but it seemed to be, contemporary stories of Superman. It didn't deal a tremendous amount with his past. It didn't deal a tremendous amount with Krypton. Mm-hmm. Now, did you watch Smallville?
Yes, I watched, I'd say about 80% of it. I still have to finish the series. But yeah, I watched a good bit of Smallville. Mainly, I think it was like in the mid 2000s. Shortly after the series was wrapping up, I was trying to catch up on it. But yeah, I enjoyed Smallville a lot.
Now, did Smallville deal with a lot of ancient Kryptonian history, or was it more, contemporary stories of Superman?
Well, nothing like we get here in Krypton, obviously. We don't have a whole lot of names and faces from Krypton in that make any type of appearance, hologram or not, in that in Smallville. But there was definitely an element to it, because there was the ship down in the bottom of the barn that he was flown to Earth in. Zod, I think Zod made an appearance. There were definitely some Kryptonian enemies that showed up on the show. So there was definitely Clark Kent, Superman's want to try and find out his history. It was there. So they dabbled in it, but then, there was obviously the Monster of the Week element that they put out there for Superman or Clark to take care of. Superboy, I guess he would be at that point in time. But anyway, yeah, it was touched on, but nothing nowhere near as in depth as we get here. I don't even know if any of these characters were mentioned in that show, to be honest, other than Zod.
And then you have Supergirl, which is heavily laden in Kryptonian lore. I mean, this year they dealt with the World Killers and followers of the Voice of Ra on Earth. They definitely do a lot of throwbacks to the point that they created a storyline where one of the cities was able to launch from Krypton, was able to launch itself into space. And
oh wow!
And just kind of float out there as like a giant piece of the planet that's still able to sustain life and all of that. If you're listening to this and you watch the Supergirl show, I don't want to give too much away here if you haven't seen this episode yet. But if I haven't mentioned it before, they brought up the World Killers, and so Supergirl deals in a lot of Superman Kryptonian lore.
Okay.
And the other side of that is a couple of years ago, DC Entertainment and the Fox Network partnered up to produce a pre-Batman show called Gotham. And so this seems to be all the rage now. Is, hey, we don't want to waste a lot of time and money on creating contemporary series for these special effects needing superheroes. Why don't we do the Land Before Time type stories? Let's do well before the known superheroes. Let's look at where the environments in which they have come from and sort of explore the stories they are in. And so just like with Gotham, which they have completely fucked up, just like with Gotham, which is terrible. And it's basically they've tried to just do Batman without Batman, and instead they've done the exact same stupid stories as in Batman. Just Batman's a little kid.
Yeah,
not even kidding about that. He has a suit and everything. If you watch Gotham, it's so bad.
No, dude, I think I have decided just to not yet. Mm-hmm. That's the thing, not yet. But I've got a couple people at work that they're like, it's a fun series. It's a fun series. I'm trying to finish it up, and I'm like, well, let me know when you do, because I hear more negative than I do positive about it. It's the
dumbest thing. Like, it started off kind of solid, and I don't want to get off on a Gotham rant here, but I have said this before. The premise of Gotham wasn't a bad idea. It was Jim Gordon as a detective in the streets of Gotham as they were run by the mob. Before the mob got taken down by Batman, and what filled in the space, what came about as a result of the mob collapsing were the
super criminals.
The super criminals, right?
Yeah,
the Jokers, the Riddlers, the Penguins, etc. Well, they've completely fucking abandoned that.
Oh, jeez.
And it's essentially Jim Gordon versus all the villains you know and love from the Batman universe without Batman. It was like one season of him solving crimes that had really nothing to do with super criminals, and then it was like, well, this show isn't doing very well. We need the Joker, and out came the Joker.
Not to jump ahead of ourselves, but I mean, that was kind of the fear that I had with this series.
Mm-hmm.
I was worried that we were going to get a lot of bits that we recognize, but no Superman. And yeah, we sort of do, but we definitely have a link to our present day and Superman, and we'll talk about that. But again, you're right. That element with Gotham is something that kind of turned me off of it. It's just like, why do I want to watch a story about what came before Batman when Batman is the draw? It's like, hey, everybody, look over here. Here's a show about Batman, but we don't have Batman in it. But you're going to recognize some stuff. Oh, well, okay. Well, maybe I'll take a chance on that. I don't know. And it's all about how the show is developed and if it will catch an audience. Well, shit, Gotham is what? On season 5 now or season 4?
5. I think they're
Season
going
5.
into season 6.
That's still pretty strong running, even for a show. Well, then again, some shows, they stay out there a little bit longer than they need to. So I don't know what's driving that. But
so to focus back on Krypton, Krypton is the same premise. It's set 200 years before the birth of Kal-El, who is Superman, and it focuses on Superman's grandfather. I don't want to do an episode-by-episode breakdown because I have found in doing this show that gets a little long in the tooth. That we get a little caught up in too many details. So we're going to attack this the way we attacked Cobra Kai and some of the more recent TV parties that we've done, which is we're going to look at themes and characters and performances and just sort of overall perceptions of the show. Let me jump right out and say this has got to be the glummest, most rusty, dirtiest, darkest. Did they shoot this whole thing in a
setting?
Did they shoot this whole fucking thing in a cave?
Yeah.
My God, it was like I've seen some other Syfy Network shows. Again, I was a huge fan of Eureka. I would actually go back and revisit that entire series, and want to talk about it. Eureka was right up my alley. It was a science fiction / Law and Order investigation show. And even though it got silly at times, it was bright and it was colorful and it had a lot of fun characters. And so years later, here's Krypton on the same network, and it's like everything has to be dark and rusty and coffee covered and coffee colored.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a big score for Syfy to grab this DC property and base a show off of it. And I thought to myself, well, you look at a lot of the other DC shows that are out there. You look at Flash. Flash is nowhere near as dark as this, and it's probably one of the, last time I heard, it was probably one of the better DC-based shows on TV. And I think the way that a show is presented may have an impact on the reception. So when you do something like this that looks like just an absolute sewer show, it's taking place below ground, it kind of sets some people off. And I think we talked about it before we got on air, what my wife thought of it. Syfy, I think, really planned on trying to make this a very serious show. There's very little humor in here. Much like, so if we're going to compare the setting versus the tone of the show, it almost, they run parallel to each other. It's very grim. It's very, these people are living in some pretty bad conditions on this planet, or at least it looks like it, because there is nary a ray of light usually. And it's usually either snowing or they're in the slums of
I would
Kandor.
love to know how in the middle of a perpetual ice age they were able to carve a city.
I don't know. I mean, I I understand that there was like some kind of a shield that shielded them from the harsh terrain outside. So I assume that maybe that's what they had to deal with. They were like, okay, well, we're under a shield, because towards the end of the series, the shield comes down, and you definitely see the sky at that point. But man, oh man, it's just so.
I guess in the evolution of man, if you're living in Siberia, you will eventually, technology will eventually evolve, and they'll come to a point where they have to defeat the elements somehow. And they'll eventually invent a shield. Before they'll invent anything else, they'll eventually come up with a way to shield themselves from the harsh elements that they've been living in, and that allows society and technology to spring forward now that they don't have to deal with perpetual winter. But Jesus Christ, I would watch. I would like they would go outside of Kandor City, and I'd be like, well, they're dead. They're gonna get eaten by inside. They're gonna get eaten by wampas.
They're peaceful, sir. I take offense to that. Those are peaceful creatures. So the other thing is, maybe it was intentional. I'll throw this theory out there. Okay, you think of the voice of Rao. Anytime you saw the voice of Rao, which is a character, well, I guess, ladies and gentlemen, we should tell you that there's a person. Well, we're talking about Ghost this coming Wednesday on the Metal Hammer of Doom.
All right, hang on. Let me jump in here. So we talked about the physical setting. The thematic setting, the plot setting is that Kandor City is in the midst of a theocracy, and their leader is known as the Voice of Rao. And the Voice of Rao is essentially a theocratic king that rules through fear and intimidation. And the other thing that you should know about how Kandor City is set up at this time is it's a caste system. They call it guilds. It's a caste system. It's essentially, if you're not in a guild, then you're rankless, and if you're rankless, you are, you are poverty stricken. Yeah,
and so tying this in with the setting, anytime you saw the Voice of Rao, it was very bright. Now, clearly, you hear the word Rao, you think sun god, which is pretty much what that is. It's a representation, and this person was like the chosen one who could talk, and it's almost like the voice of God. So anytime you saw him, it was bright light. It was the sunshine. It seemed like, of course, it was artificial, but regardless, it was very bright, very sunny. The people up top are living well. The people down on the bottom of the caste system are not doing so hot, and therefore it's dark, it's gritty, it's wet, it's puddles everywhere and hiding in alleys, dirt on your face. Go take a bath. No, I can't.
So do you watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. at all?
No, not since the first season.
Okay, so Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. did this exact same thing. This season they started off where almost everybody except for Fitz got abducted and taken into the future. And in the future, allegedly, Quake has destroyed the Earth, and the remnants of humanity live on a space station run by the Kree.
Oh boy.
And there are parts of the space station that are essentially like sewers. And that's where a good portion...
Everything is
black and dirty and and coffee colored and looks like Krypton, basically.
Yeah.
That's why I'm drawing this comparison. But where the Kree who run the space station live, bright and golden and colorful. It was as if they used the same set.
Wow. Well, very well could have been. Very well could have been. It's painfully obvious when you're watching this show because I was down here in the basement. There's very little light except for one light that I have on, and I felt compelled to turn that light off in order for me to see the fucking screen. So, I mean, I understand they're trying to get a point across with the way it's being filmed. I guarantee you that's on purpose how they did that, whether it be along with the plot or to get a feeling, some type of emotion from the viewer. But it's tough to see the show sometimes. Mm-hmm. So it can work. It can work against you, and I think in this case it did.
I just thought it was boring. I didn't think the show necessarily was boring. I think there was some of it that was really interesting. And we're not going to do an hour of just saying Krypton is crap. There were some good points to it.
Oh yeah,
but I mean, as far as the physical setting and everything, I just thought it was boring. You know, when you think about, we're going to take you to new worlds and show you new things, and what was life like for Superman's relatives before Krypton blew up. Well, apparently it really wasn't worth looking at. It looked like the 1930s Depression.
Yeah, it was not exactly the greatest place to be. You know, we did a source material covering Krypton, the books, and those came out, I think, in the 80s, if I remember right. And remember the way that looked? It didn't look anything like this.
It was so bright and colorful, and it was like Krypton was described as a paradise. This version of Krypton is a shithole.
Exactly.
I don't want to go to Krypton. I did in the books.
I don't know what their budget was. There are clearly some great special effects in this show. You know, we'll probably touch on a few of those, but they maybe could have afforded a couple more lights. I'm just saying.
What kills me is that, like, if you look at some of the depictions of Krypton in other media, so let's look at the most recent Man of Steel. Okay, sure, yep. Everything was sepia tone, and clearly the cinematographer was colorblind, but it still looked like an interesting futuristic biotechnology society. In a place that I might want to visit before it blows up. You know, it didn't look like this. It didn't necessarily look like a dingy hellhole. Yeah. And then you don't want Supergirl, but they've done flashbacks to her living in Argo City or whatever. And again, Krypton looks like it looks like Manhattan. You know, yep. It's tall buildings and brightly lit skies, and it's sort of it looks like the Jetsons basically.
Yeah,
and, it looks really interesting. And then it's like it's like again, David S. Goyer sort of. It's like, what do we want Krypton to look like? How about Brooklyn at high tide?
Brilliant,
right?
Cut print.
So we'll move this along here, and so. The series starts off with Kal-El, and I need to talk to you about this, because before we can even get to Seg-El's story, and Seg-El is our titular hero of this thing. He's our star. He is Superman's grandfather, the father of Jor-El, who is not yet born. But this starts with Seg-El as a kid, and Kal-El is going before the voice of Ra, saying, "We are not alone in the universe." Now, I'm going to stop there. You have to understand, this is not like, even though it's a theocratic society, they have not shunned technology in any way that I could see.
Yeah, it's rather advanced.
Right. They are definitely not saying, God will provide, we don't need your fancy schmancy technology. They're fully embraced a technological world. They're just, but they struggle with the concept that there's other beings in the universe.
Well, there's a very strong religious, I don't want to say section, but it's not a sect. Although there are some, because we find out there's like an ice goddess or some shit like that throughout here. But yeah, they have strong religious sensibilities, but they also have a very, very advanced scientific section of the society as well. So, two very opposite parts.
But here's where I'm going this week. We had this conversation, and unfortunately Ronnie's not here to harumph for us, but we had this conversation where we talked about the Orwell and how there was the discussion. There was the point put forward that once society gave up on religion, they were able to advance scientifically. And I'm not picking on him, but Ronnie really has struggled with that idea. That's kind of insulting to people who have faith. Why is faith necessarily? His argument essentially was, why does faith have to be a block to scientific progression? They don't always. They're not always counterintuitive. And any minute now, my dad's going to come crashing through my front door and tell me that it absolutely is counterintuitive and that anyone that has any kind of religious faith is a moron and, and wants to go back to square tires. So there's that belief out there as well. I'm not saying which is right or which is wrong. I'm just saying that these are out there. But I have to be honest, and I want to get your reaction to this. I had a hard time believing that Krypton was this advanced society that would have fallen into a theocracy to the point that they're going to kill a guy for saying there's aliens in the world.
Yeah, well, I understand where you're coming from there. Clearly, all they had to do was point their instruments in one spot and say, okay, look, here it is. No, we are not going to acknowledge that there are aliens out there. And yeah, at some point, even the Pope is going to have to say, okay, yeah, well, that's science has shown this. There's a way to do that and have a balance. There's a way to do that and say, okay, well, yeah, that's there. Clearly you can see it. But our belief says it's something different.
Do you think it's a political agenda on the part of the writers and the producers of this thing to go, that this is their way of editorializing on religion? That religion is such a bad thing that even in a futuristic world, it would do its part to block as much progress as it could.
The problem with religion is that man gets involved, and that's where it's not the religion that's bad, it's the man that's bad. Mm-hmm. So, I didn't feel like they were doing that. I think that their intention was to show you that this society had somehow soldiered forth with, even though with all these scientific advancements, there was still a strong belief that, you could not acknowledge some things. That is just a fact of some of the society that we're in right now, and it's just taken to an nth level. I don't think it's an agenda to try and show that religion is bad. It's just that some people believe that certain extreme things, and a lot of times that results in some pretty bad stuff.
So what you're saying is that not everybody in Hollywood's a communist who hates religion?
I'm making a case for them. I'm doing my best.
Okay. So the cast is kind of divided between your L's, led by Seg, and your Zods, led by Lyta. Her mom is one of the head military people. The story essentially is this. At the time that we meet Seg, the House of El has fallen to rankless. And here's where Adam Strange, I don't know if you knew anything about this character. I didn't.
Yes, I have. I don't know everything about this guy, but I knew he was definitely another superhero of the DC universe. Mm-hmm.
Well, he shows up, and he has been given Superman's cape as sort of a hourglass. And he doesn't know what the threat is. He thinks he knows, and that's the big twist in the story. But he is here to get Seg to help stop whatever threat is out there that leads to Superman never being born.
Okay, let me stop you real quick.
Okay,
because there's Jesse Starcher's hook that made me go, oh, look at that shiny thing, and I jumped on it, and up to the surface I went. As soon as you mentioned time travel, as soon as you mentioned that plot point, I can't remember where I first heard that. I was immediately like, okay, I've got to at least look at the first episode. So personally, I'm just putting that out there. I don't know if that does that for everybody, but I was like, here's the tie. Here's the thing that makes it believable for me to see. I shouldn't say believable. It makes it more interesting. The fact that we have this tie to the present day Superman. Superman's not in this. His cape is, and the very real sensibility that Superman is in danger is. So I was hooked. Now, Adam Strange, I didn't know much about that character at all, and I was curious as to how he was going to be portrayed. And when you watch like the first episode, if you go into this cold and you see a guy running around, what do you have, a Detroit Tigers hat on?
Right.
And you're like, what the hell? That guy sticks out. This is Krypton. What's going on?
That's some poor costuming right there.
So I was excited. So continue. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to make sure I got that point across.
But I do love the line though in the story where he looks at his hat and he was like, "What house are you from?" And it's like this.
Yeah.
But so Adam thinks he's here to stop Brainiac from taking Kandor City, but it is the very act of taking Kandor City that eventually leads to Kal-El being shipped off of Krypton right before it blows to smithereens and coming to Earth and becoming the Superman. So what he realizes later on is that there's another time traveler afoot, and
he believed that Brainiac went. Did he believe Brainiac went back in time in order to try and destroy Krypton prior to it? He
believes Brainiac's the threat. I'm not entirely sure if he thought Brainiac went back in time or whatever. But by the way, Brainiac capturing Kandor City is also like comic book lore. That happened.
Yes, that is a big sticking point to a lot of DC continuity.
We talked about that with Red Sun, where it was his, to Superman's great shame, he was never able to restore Kandor City to its proper size.
Yeah.
I feel like this gets mentioned at some point in the Many Worlds of Krypton stories, but in Superman's dealings with Brainiac, he does discover that Kandor City has been a little ship in a bottle for Brainiac. So the writers really did take a big chunk of Superman's lore and played with it. So the other character that shows up in this thing is General Zod.
Oh, yeah.
And here's where things get interesting. And I know we're jumping around and we're not necessarily following any kind of linear pattern here, but there's just there are just some things I need to talk about, and so you're just going to have to follow along here, and I hope we're doing so in an entertaining fashion. But I remember, like, at the start of the series, it kind of dragged for me. They had to establish that Seg, was this fallen on hard times, roughneck, barhound kid who, whose family had been disgraced. Then Adam shows up and says, "Hey, dude, there's a greater purpose and a chance for hope here," and he sends him on this mission. And things are starting to pick up a little bit. They show that he's got a romance going with Lyta Zod and all of that. But he's promised to this other to Nyssa, who is ranked in a guild, and it's her dad who works for the voice of Rao and all of that. And so there's some interesting things going on, but the whole thing gets upended, and this series really shifts into high gear when they're brought to this new leader of Black Zero, who turns out to be the time-traveling General Zod. And General Zod is absolutely here to stop Brainiac from taking Kandor City, which makes Adam Strange go back and reflect on his thoughts here and go, well, wait a minute. If he's here, and Brainiac is supposed to take Kandor City, because that's what leads to, and I think it's Zod who tells them about this, taking Kandor City sets off a chain reaction that 200 years later will result in Krypton blowing up to smithereens.
Yep.
And with that piece of information, Adam then realized that his whole mission's been turned on its head. He's not here to stop Brainiac. He's here to stop Zod.
Yeah. He's left with a question as to whether, is Brainiac the threat? Well, Brainiac's a fucking threat. Whether he's not immediately, right there, which we find out that he is on planet Krypton. But Brainiac's a threat one way or the other. The thing is that his mission is to stop that. His mission was to stop that time traveler from destroying Krypton, or at least that's what he thought. The time traveler was a threat to Superman. You need to stop this. So at first he thinks it's Brainiac, and then Zod shows up and he's like, oh shit, he's the one I'm supposed to be after. He's the one. But the thing is that making that decision, if he's supposed to stop Zod, he has to allow Kandor to be taken by Brainiac, which is that's a big thing to deal with. You're choosing one person over and allowing all these other millions to be taken, and potentially Krypton to be destroyed.
You have to convince Seg that that's what he has to do.
Yeah,
like it's one thing if it just happens and you happen to be a survivor of a tragic event of that scope. If you are the survivor of the burning of Chicago or something like that, like you just get through it and you think you're lucky stars you lived. But what if somebody were to tell you, and I'll go back to the burning of Chicago again. Do you know that story, by the way?
For some reason I'm thinking that there was a cow that kicked over something in a barn.
Yeah, the cow kicked Nellie in the belly in the barn and she bursted into flames and burned Chicago to the ground.
Well, so I was close.
or something like that. Yes, but there's something about a cow and a fire in Chicago burnt to the ground, as I understand the story. In any case, but imagine if you were told that in order for like some time traveler comes in, says, "Hey, Chicago's going to burn to the ground. The cow's going to kick Nellie and set this whole place ablaze. We need to go get Nellie away from. We need to go get the cow away from Nellie." Going to keep running with this.
Okay, do that.
And then somebody else comes along and says, No. You have to let the cow kick Nellie and set the place on fire because in doing so, these other great things will happen. But you have to go through a little bit of pain first. And you're like, what am I supposed to do with this information?
Yeah.
That's the interesting place Seg is in. And I thought that was the most interesting part of the show, was the internal and external debate among the characters of, well, do we let millions of people suffer a fate worse than death by being in Brainiac's ship in a bottle, or do we risk losing a hero that will save the universe on countless occasions, but the people on the planet that are alive now will get to live full and fruitful lives?
Yeah. Therein lies kind of one of the neat things that they did with this series. You're coming into Krypton and you're most likely going to know a little bit about the history of Superman. Okay, most likely. Now their goal is to try and start something off fresh, so new people would come in and view it. But if you knew something about Superman, you probably knew some of his villains. You heard of the name Brainiac. Have you heard of General Zod? Oh yeah. If you've watched the movie, you know this guy is kind of a bastard. I mean, he's a shithead. The good thing that they do is they bring him in with this tremendous. This guy has a vision to save Krypton. How can you fault him for that? That is his plan. And you, as the viewer, at least I was like, man, I'm pulling for General Zod here. I really liked, of course, Colin Salmon. I like the guy who played General Zod, by the way. I think he did a great job. And they made me go, okay, how can I fault Zod for doing what he does? Yeah, in the past, we believe that he's a complete and utter douchebag for the way that he acts and the militaristic views that he has. But he's coming back to save his people. Where can we find the wrong in that? And if anything, throughout this whole series, if you look at Zod and what he says, I think he's completely honest with everybody that he talks to. Yeah, I want to save the planet. And I think somebody had, I can't remember, it was right after Lyta and him had that fight. And I think Seg looks at him and said, "What'd you do to Lyta?" He's like, "I didn't do anything to Lyta." When we find out, in fact, it wasn't. No, not Lyta. I'm sorry, Jaina. See, there lies the fault in this show. I can't keep names straight, and when you got weird names like Lyta, Jaina, Dev, Seg, Nissa, it's tough for me to keep names right. But yes, Jaina and Zod had, which Jaina, by the way, is Zod's grandmother. Mm-hmm. Challenges him to a a duel that's going to end in the death of somebody. Zod's on the end of that, and Lyta shows up, which is Zod's mother, Jaina's daughter, and shoots her. Now, again, Zod looks at Seg and says, I didn't do anything to her. He was completely honest.
But by the same token, there's a comment made midway through the show, which ends up let's just go right to the conclusion. They're able to defeat Brainiac, and it opens the way for Zod to take control over Krypton and fill the void left by the voice of Rao, and become, in turn, Krypton into a military dictatorship that at some point conquers Earth.
Yeah, that's our big cliffhanger for season 2, as we see. Man, that was pretty painful. I was sitting there like, okay, everybody's won. Sig ends up in the Phantom Zone. We were jumping all around, ladies and gentlemen, but regardless, yeah, you see, I just think that's Zod, though. That's Zod's motivation. Yeah, he's a militaristic leader.
It's a great plan, because if you're sitting there and it's like, here's a time travel device, and if you're not thinking, well, I'm going to get a sports almanac and go back and bet on all the winners, the other option you have is really nothing.
Oh, dude, I love it. I certainly have not. Yes, that did not get lost on me. I understand that reference.
Okay, good. Moving on. The other option is, what if I stop Brainiac and take over Krypton? I will have defeated 2 of my greatest enemies of all time. Superman, because I will in effect create a situation where he will never be born, or if he is born, he will never go to Earth and become an invincible figure, and we'll get rid of Brainiac all at the same time. Fantastic, and then I can finally, be the leader of Krypton that I've always wanted to be, and get revenge on all those assholes who sent me into the Phantom Zone. I mean, it's a pretty perfect plan.
There was a lot of great things, I thought, along with you, where when Zod showed up and everything that unfolded with him, I think that was probably one of the strongest points of this series. We find out that. The other big thing concerning Zod is the fact that Seg is his fucking dad.
See, I don't know. Did you like that? Because I don't know how I felt about it. That got a little too soap opera-ish for me.
Dude, I was on hook. I was ready. I was like, this is good. Because now Zod has to deal with the fact, I don't know if this is actual continuity in comics. That's one of the weaknesses that I have, as to whether this is something. I don't think it is. That's my opinion. I don't know if it's fact. But if that was the case, if Seg is his dad, then that would obviously make General Zod what? That would be his uncle? He'd be Superman.
It would be Kal-El's uncle's brother's former roommate.
Okay. Now you're just making a joke of it. No, he would be brothers. He would be brothers with Jor-El, unbeknownst to himself.
Wait a minute. Just don't dismiss what I just said. Do you not know what that was?
Is that another reference?
Damn you, Jesse Starcher.
If it's not Monty Python, because I'm not going to understand that.
No, that's Spaceballs.
Spaceballs. Okay. All right.
I am your father's brother's cousin's former roommate. Well, what does that make us? Absolutely nothing.
Your Schwartz is as big as mine.
You know that one, don't you? All right.
Yes.
Have you ever seen Spaceballs?
Oh yeah, dude. It's been 15 to 20 years though. That's
and you don't have every line memorized like I do? Okay, sure.
I'm sorry. So what do you think here, man? You don't like the fact that he's now going to be?
I expected Erica from like One Life to Live or whatever soap opera she was on to just come walking in after that, and just like, and Zeg is having Zod's baby, and it was just a little too over the top. I was expecting, Jesse to start taking amphetamine pills and Zach having to bear hug her. She's saying, "I'm so excited," and then.
Saved by the Bell.
And what about Dylan in all of this?
Oh boy, and a very special episode of Krypton.
I just riffed on like 5 different shows there, but yeah, it was a little too over the top soap opera-ish for me. I mean, really, did he have? It felt like they wrote themselves into a corner which we'll get to this next part because I have to talk about this. So here's the thing. What I liked was the philosophical debate over whether or not they needed to save the people of Kandor or sacrifice them for the greater good of creating Superman. Does Superman's life equal all the lives of Kandor City? That's a great debate.
It is.
Okay? And Seg having to kind of be the judge between Adam Strange and Zod as they both presented their cases to him. And him not knowing what to do, and him being in this position of either way, I have to make a shitty decision. And what it says about his character, about the way that he handled it, and everything else, and the other characters having an opinion on the matter as well, and acting on those opinions. And so there was some fun double crosses and things like that, and all of that I liked. Here's what I didn't like about the show. There was two things. One, when they brought up Doomsday, I was like, all right, and where's Mitzelplix in all of this? Why don't we just bring out the entire... It started to do that Gotham thing of, we need to get, it's the, everyone take a drink. It started to become the cruiserweight match where everyone's got to get their shit in. And I was like, all right, we couldn't save Doomsday for something else. It was like... Doomsday was created so that they could create, a Death of Superman arc, and at that point, Superman had beat the shit out of everybody else, so they just created a monster for Superman to beat up, and suddenly Doomsday has become, like, this iconic DC, I would have preferred maybe Bizarro, something along those lines, and I understand you need Superman for Bizarro, I get that, but, there's so much else out there in the world of Superman lore, but yet we keep going back to the well, and I'm going to pin this squarely on David S. Goyer here because he's responsible for Batman v Superman, and what did we get with Man of Steel and Batman v Superman? Fucking Zod and fucking Doomsday.
Okay.
As if the guy has read no other Superman comics.
We cannot... Well, I understand getting tired of seeing Doomsday. I do. I really do. Their motivation here, I think, with this series is to... We've got to get some names in there. We've got to get some people that show up that make the Superman fans go, okay, I recognize who that character is. Doomsday is absolutely going to be one of them. He is responsible for one of the most memorable moments in Superman's comic book history. So the thing is that if you're going to do Doomsday, you better damn well do him right. Okay? Now, the Doomsday we got in the comics was something I think completely different from what we get in here. In other words, in regards to its creation. Because I think at first when I saw that, I thought Doomsday was sent back in time as well. Like they sent him back in time, and then for some reason he was thrown into a vault and kept secret from everybody. I have now learned that is not the case. Like Doomsday was created by the people on Krypton. And am I correct here, Mark? Step in if I am butchering anything that you can completely remember.
No, from the way they explained it was... He was created by the people of Krypton and then kept under guard by the people who worship Wampas.
I think you're mixing mythologies there, but we'll let that slide. Yeah. So anyway, I don't mind that take on Doomsday. We know who Doomsday is. The neat spin on this is that there is no Superman for Doomsday to fight here. That's what I think makes this interesting. The fact that he is there, and now granted that's the big stinger at the end is Doomsday's been in stasis. He's in stasis throughout this whole series. So I understand what you're saying. There's a whole other bit of Superman lore out there, but really, just like you said with Bizarro, you need Superman. Okay, well we could throw in Mitzelplix, but my goodness, that's too silly for this show. I mean, my goodness, we've got to be serious here, Mark.
This is a David S. Goyer DC Cinematic Universe production. We can't have any fun.
No, not happening.
Nobody's allowed to smile. It's a very grim universe. But what I was starting to say was I feel like they wrote themselves into a corner because like they wanted to do this thing where Zod could unlock Doomsday, and they were like, well, it has to be a blood of an El, but it was created by the House of El and the House of Zod, and so you needed both of their bloods to open the things because why? Because sure, why not slit your wrist in order to open a door? Why not have just a key? Fucking weird futuristic society this is. We have floating cars, and we put all this information into crystals. But how do you open doors? We fucking fillet ourselves. That's what.
Give me a knife.
Anywho, people are out there like it's dramatic tension. It was symbolism. Like I get it, but it's still
over fucking done, is what it is.
Yeah,
how
it
many
really
fucking
is.
movies and shows have we seen where that seems to be something that happens? So we got to cut ourselves in order to do something.
Yeah, I just want someone once to be like, well, do we have to cut our palms in order for this to happen? No, you savage. I have a key. Anyway, so I feel like the whole reason they wrote Seg as his dad was just for that like dramatic effect, and no other reason. Like I don't think it serves the character any good, because here's the thing: the places you could go with that have to have Superman involved. If Seg-El is Zod's father, it's Seg and Lyta who are so he's actually Kal-El's uncle.
Yeah, he would be Jor-El's brother.
Right.
So unbeknownst to himself, because throughout the series, I think it's Jaina who says, "Who was your dad?" He's like, I did not know my dad.
Right.
Yeah, he has no idea, and then he figures it out along with us, and we're like, oh goodness. I was like, dude, I'm sitting there going, I had my jaw dropped when I saw that. I was like, that's going to be an interesting plot point, in my opinion. And I really think that they haven't canceled this, have they?
No, it's been renewed for season 2.
Okay, all right. For some reason, I was worried. I saw it on a list of stuff that got canceled. So Zod looks like a real big meanie at the end of this. He looks like a real big bad. But I really think we're going to get a redemption story for Zod in some way. Mm-hmm. Even though you don't like this, I think it's going to tie into the next season and how he's going to be redeemed in some way. Zod won't. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thing.
I was just going to say, I think Zod's not going to come out looking like the horrible bad guy that we all assume he is.
Mm-hmm.
So I really think that a lot of what we do, we just don't put ourselves in his shoes.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
So I want to talk about where we're left here and then kind of go back over a couple of things. But where we're left is Seg-El's trapped in the Phantom Zone, and Zod's ruling over Krypton, and Adam Strange is, I think, trapped in a bottle on Brainiac's ship.
Is that where he's at?
That's the impression I got.
I thought he went back to Earth. I thought he was back on Earth.
But everything's frozen, and they made a point of saying that when you're on Brainiac's ship, you're frozen.
Then, okay. So I was trying to put things together. It was funny because I think I left episode 8. Episode 8 is where they end, and Adam Strange is standing on Earth, and he walks up to that girl, and her eyes just move, and she's completely frozen. I was like, oh, great.
Yeah. Man,
this is going to be so awesome. And then episode 9 and episode 10 touch nothing on it until the very end, where you see Adam Strange doing the same thing again. So I don't know where the hell he's at. I thought he went back to Earth. No, actually, here's what happens, if I remember correctly. As he looks at that girl that's frozen, he then looks up, and you see this towering statue of Zod.
Right.
Okay, so is he back on Earth under a Zod-controlled Earth? Didn't they say that they were going to use technology from Brainiac that they had learned to wage to try to put it unpleasantly, go out and conquer? And I think that might be what it is. They're using that technology on Earth.
They might be on Earth where people are frozen in place and there's a statue of Zod or whatever, or they're on Brainiac's ship.
One or the other.
Yeah, one or the other.
Go look at the wiki, ladies and gentlemen. We're tired of telling you what.
But that's the thing. No, I've got the wiki up, and you're right. The 9 and 10 don't deal with any of that.
Yeah.
Adam sees a giant statue of Zod in the immobilized Earth city he's in. Why is it immobilized?
So it is Earth.
It's definitely an Earth city, but
Okay.
I think for what I got out of it was the implication was that Brainiac had picked up, we'll say it's Philadelphia, had picked up Philadelphia and took it with him, and that's where Adam landed. So so Adam goes back to where he came from. He yo-yos to the place that he left from, but the place he left from in this timeline is a city captured by Brainiac.
I'm thinking it's immobilized by Zod in some way. I think they use that technology to do it. Did they say in the wiki it's definitely Brainiac? Okay.
No.
Okay. Well, then we'll find out at season 2. See which one of our theories is correct.
But yeah, I mean I don't know, because the other thing is that Brainiac went into the Phantom Zone. So
yeah.
So
they got a big ass Brainiac ship to deal with there.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's just kind of hanging out there now.
So long story short, too late. Where we're left is that Brainiac and Seg-El went into the Phantom Zone, and Zod is now ruling Krypton as a military dictator. And the implication is that eventually they'll at some point in time they'll conquer Earth, and that's where we are. Let's go back a step. So, as far as characters and portrayals go, I just want to talk about some of our stars here. You have Cameron Cuffe as Seg-El. What did you think of the actor, his performance, and what did you think of the of how they wrote Seg-El?
I think they did a great job. He was one of the stronger ones. Obviously, they knew what they were doing, putting this guy in this role. He has if you just look at him, he has almost that Superman look about him. And it would be easy just to say, look at this person and basically tether those two, to tether Superman and Seg. So as far as appearances go and his portrayal of the character, I've never read anything about Seg-El, so I don't. That's almost like a positive for Syfy here, because they have a fresh character that they can just do anything they want to with. But this person has to represent the sensibilities and the heritage of Superman. I liked him.
Okay. So the Zods are a bunch of badass warriors. And the two Zods we're introduced to are a pair of black women. Hashtag Me Too.
Jeez. I don't know. You can't. Those have nothing to do with each other.
It's 2018. All the women are strong.
Okay. It's
all
female.
the women can kick men's asses. Get it?
Okay.
Don't you understand?
I hear you. I hear you, bro. There's a bitch in the pit.
Body counts in the house. Body count.
I had no idea that he was writing a song that was supporting. Yeah, it was way ahead of its time.
I'm making a joke because my first thought when they introduced the Zod family and it was two black women, I was like, of course it is. Sure.
Oh no.
Because I'm sure Kryptonian anatomy, the women are in fact stronger than men. It makes total sense. I look, the actresses themselves are fine. The performances they gave are fine. They're perfectly adequate. I just had to laugh that we're in 2018. It was like, we need a strong, militaristic, bully type character. Have you checked out Cher? Like, what? Like, well, she's...
What?
I'm going to stop politicizing this, and I'm just going to throw it back to you. What do you think of the Zods?
The Zods. Well, I did not like Jaina at first, the lady that plays Jaina, which is Lyda's mother. She felt completely wooden to me. Like, it was just... There was almost nothing there. But then we hit the episode where they show a little bit about her background, the way she was raised. And, of course, the Zods are a very proud family, a very honorable family. And they are skilled warriors. That's one of their biggest callings.
They are too black, too strong.
That too. I don't think that's what the sigil means for the Zod family.
Oh, I think it does.
There could be. I guess you could argue that. Well, I mean, what do we see at the end other than Zod standing there? Did he have his fist in the air in that statue?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He absolutely was.
No.
He was Malcolm X in that shit.
Oh, fuck. So, anyway.
Oh, they were all doing hands up, don't shoot.
Jaina, I didn't like her at first, but when they gave a little bit better.
Did you notice the Zod sigil actually spells out, if you look at it from a certain angle, Black Lives Matter?
I swear. Just. Anyway. They finally hit a point in the series that developed the character a little bit better for me, and I liked her and her interaction with Zod, and understanding where she came from. Now, Lyta, I mean, we are subject to this will they, won't they thing between her and Seg, and of course the triangle with the other lady, which was Nyssa. So
let me jump in here. Two things. So people don't misunderstand me. I'm fine with. I don't care that the Zod family line is black. I'm not even making a comment about that other than some of the, I was making a few jokes, but I had to make jokes just about anything. So, like, the fact that the guy playing Zod I thought was great. And I really thought he played him as somewhat conflicted with what he was doing. And, and driven by, but also driven by, he wanted to get revenge on Superman. So that's fine. I'm more making fun of the fact that before we get to him, our introduction to the Zods are these two black women, and it's like and I'm only making fun of that because it just seemed like it was it just seems like it was like, well, we got to get women in strong roles, and so let's make them the military people and all of that. But here's the thing. Here's why I'm as much as as much as I want to poke fun at it, I also get it, and it makes sense. They were creating a love interest for Seg-El. And the only other way, and unless they're going to make, his love interest a black guy, which is a whole other kettle of fish, nothing wrong with it. But, but I think, like, how many political statements do they want to make with a Syfy show about Superman's granddad?
Mark Radlich. I didn't feel as strong as a political agenda here as you did. Let's just put it that way. But okay, I understand.
The Trumpiest show this season,
Krypton. Yeah. Okay, so just real quick with Lyta to finish up what I was saying with her. I thought she was okay. She fell under her mother's shadow. Her mother was definitely more of a hard ass than I got. Jaina was definitely more of a hard ass than Lyta was, and there was very much an estranged feeling between the two. And I'm glad they kind of resolved that through the series. But again, at first it was kind of hard to take because I did not like the way that she was coming. I did not like the way that Jaina was coming across the screen here to me. But the Zods were okay. I mean, I definitely understood that these guys, that this family was a bunch of badasses. They had to be. I would figure they would have had to have been in order for General Zod to actually come from that lineage. So there's that.
All right, and then lastly, I wanted to ask you, what did you think of the guy who played Adam Strange?
I liked him. I liked his fish out of water feel. He definitely felt down to earth, which is exactly what he's supposed to. He definitely, or from Earth, down from Earth, and he's like the Marty McFly, the guy that's out of time, and he's got to try and get this one event to happen. So I thought he did a great job. Sean Sipos. I definitely have to point out, and I know I sent you a message, but they did a Marvel nod when Adam was talking to the hologram of Kal-El, and he says, after a long conversation about what was going on, he leaves the room, but before leaving, he looks back and he says, "Piss off, ghost," just like Korg did from Ragnarok. But yeah, I loved his character. I like, it's hard not to be biased. I'm a time travel guy, so the guy that's going to be time traveling is probably going to be one of my favorite characters. And I'm glad they picked this guy to represent Adam Strange. I think he did a fine job.
Yeah, I didn't know much about Adam Strange. I kept confusing him with Dr. Fate. I kept waiting for the helmet to come out.
Oh, no, not going to happen.
Wrong guy.
Beam, those are the two things. I know Adam Strange's name, and I know he does the Zeta Beam thing. I think the biggest story I've read that contained Adam Strange was 52. Now, have you ever heard of that story?
Only that Gavin wants to talk about it on source material.
52 weekly issues from the DC. This was one of the big events, but they all told different types of stories at different times throughout the issues, and they were small issues. But regardless, Adam Strange and I think Animal Man are trying to get back to Earth. But that's the one story I think I know this guy from. He's been in stuff.
Didn't Adam Strange show up in that Johnny Quest Hanna-Barbera crossover?
Oh yeah, he did. I think he did. Yeah, that's right, because he has to get back home, and they have to do some kind of crazy thing with the Zeta Beam again. Good stuff.
Do sound familiar. All right. Well, that yawn means we've reached the end of our show. No.
No. we got to talk about Brainiac.
Do we?
His arc moved as slow as his fucking ship.
You know what? Actually, that's what I wanted to talk about. So, here's my, and I'm gonna give you the final word to kind of get out your burning desires. If you want to talk about Brainiac, be my guest. But here's all I have left to say about this show. This would have been a better 2-hour made-for-TV movie than a series. It had one thing going. And that was Brainiac is coming. Zod is here. What do we do? That's the whole thing. Nothing else happens. They don't deal with anything else. There's no other threats. There's no other monsters. There's no other plots. It's just Brainiac and Zod and the ultimate choice that Seg has to make. And that could have been... And I feel like where they left it gives us more grist for the mill. A Zod-run Krypton and an Adam Strange who has to figure out how to get Seg back and how to undo what Zod has done, which is all fine and good, and I think makes for an and I'm actually excited about season 2 now that I know where this is going. There's a lot of unanswered questions. I want to see what happens. But I feel like they could have gotten to the same place with a 2-hour made-for-TV movie because they wasted a lot of time in the middle of this series. And I feel like the stuff with Nyssa and her dad and Black Zero wasn't fleshed out nearly enough to be interesting. I did not care.
It might have been fleshed out, but it might have been fleshed out too much. It was like, okay, we've got to take this little bit and really stretch it out.
Yeah.
And we got to get into all the intricacies and, okay, talking, more talking.
And even the voice of Rao stuff wasn't that interesting to me. I mean, I feel like a lot could have been done. If you're going to make a series out of this thing, they needed to spend a little bit more time with what the voice of Rao was and how the voice of Rao behaved and what he believed and why he felt the need to kill Val all those years ago and all of that. Because it just kind of gets glossed over so that we could get to Seg fighting in a bar. Which annoyed the living shit out of me because, oh, sure, he's a big tough guy. Grew up in the hard streets of Candor City. Oh, blow me. They only know how to write lead characters one way, I think. I don't know. I feel like there were other corners of the Superman universe that needed more exploration, and instead they kind of just stuck with the same thread. I'm like, well, if you're going to do that, then just do a 2-hour movie, and you can get to those same points a lot faster.
Yeah. Well, let me talk about Brainiac first. I mean, just like from episode 1 to the very end of the episode, there is that one threat, and that's Brainiac is coming. Whether he time traveled like I thought at the beginning, or whether he's just out there and he is on his way. We know Kandor is going to fall victim to Brainiac. Is there a way to stop it? Is there a way to stop Brainiac? Now, Brainiac's a pretty powerful villain. But, he shows up on Krypton, takes over as the voice of Ral, and you find if anybody out there who doesn't know who Brainiac is, I don't know why you're listening to this show, number one. But number two, he is much like, almost kind of like the Borg. They're technologically advanced. Brainiac is one singular person, but he can send out he can send out what they call them, sentries. But regardless, you had a machine hop into the body of a religious figure, and they tried to play with the whole religion versus technology and faith, and it's like there were statements that were trying to be made, but they really just fell flat. There just wasn't enough there to make an impact on somebody like me, who is a comic book fan, knows about the properties, knows most of the characters you're bringing in. The statements that you're trying to make throughout the series, again, could have been compact, just like Mark's saying. I don't know if I'd say 2-hour movie. It could have been like maybe 3 or 4 episodes less. The thing is that 10 episodes is a short season of anything. So, so I don't know. I did enjoy the special effects of this show, though. There are some, as hard as the time as we give in the setting and what the sets look like. When you see Brainiac's ship, or I was really surprised at how ruthless some of the gunplay was, when I think somebody got their head completely blown off, somebody got their arm completely blown off. Now that wasn't a staple throughout the episodes, but when it happened, it was enough to make me go, "Oh, geez, damn, what just happened?" And so I think there is definitely a special effect budget when you look at Brainiac and everything that he looked like, and all the crazy tentacle stuff that was going off with him.
It was like a hentai movie.
Oh boy, yeah. So as a villain, the only thing that really he had going for him was the fact that if you knew who Brainiac was, you knew what type of threat he could be. I think one of the best showings of his power was when all the Sagittari come at him with all the ships. They're like, "All right, here it comes." And
he does what everyone wanted Luke Skywalker to do in The Last Jedi.
Exactly. He just raises his hand and then waves it, and every single one of those fighters just go down straight into the fucking ground. So, this guy's powerful, but
there you go,
there could have been
there you go, much. Nerds. For all of you who hated The Last Jedi, just become Brainiac fans.
So much more. As for a series, I was going into it with rather low expectations. At first, I was like, okay, my expectations are pretty well in tune with what's happening in front of me. But as I got to episode 3 and the introduction of Zod, when you find out that that's Zod, I think that was the pivotal moment where I was like, okay, I'm going to stick around a lot longer than I thought I would be. If it wasn't for having to do this show tonight, most likely this would have been something I would have never watched, at least for quite a while.
I'm sorry.
So, no, I don't think you put me through torture. That's the thing. We got our good buddy, Pat, who said he didn't understand why we were watching this. Well, at first I was like, because I've got to. But after episode 3...
I'm contractually obligated.
After episode 3, I was like, okay, this is actually getting good. I enjoyed a lot of elements of this show. I don't think that I regret in any way, shape, or form sitting down and watching all 10 episodes. If this was something that was 15 or 16 episodes, man, could you imagine how long and drawn out that would have been if they would have kept the same pace that they did here, and Brainiac finally shows up at the second to last episode.
I watched a lot of this playing on my phone.
I don't blame you. I mean, there was just a lot of talking heads, and that's one of the drawbacks. But if you're really, really paying attention to the plot, and if you're a time travel fan like me, I'd say give Krypton a chance. I think it'll be interesting to see where they go next season. So I'm glad I had the opportunity to watch it and talk about it with my good buddy Mark.
I think the final thing I want to say about the show is it's less stupid than Gotham.
That's a plus.
That's paddling. It's less stupid than Gotham. I think it's handled better than Gotham in the sense that Gotham just went crazy, rushing like hundreds of years of storylines into 5 seasons because people just basically didn't really like the premise. People, and to the point where it makes me wonder why they keep doing stuff like this, because like I was looking at the ratings for it, and like people were interested to see what they were going to come up with, but there were definitely dwindling returns as the series went on. Less and less people. Yeah, like I have the numbers right in front of me from the Wikipedia. There were, for the pilot, there were 2.9 million people watching. By the time it got to the Phantom Zone, episode 10, 1.47.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. There are 3 shows in which there's no data. But for the 8th episode, it was 1.52. Like, there's a steady drop. It's like 2.9, 2.5, 2.2, 2.1, 1.6, 1.5, 1.4. The ratings went from a 0.4 to a 0.1 by the time it was over.
Ouch.
And they renewed it anyway. So, like, I ain't mad at them for doing that. And like I said, I'm interested enough in the story that they're telling that, like, I'm glad it continued despite the shit ratings that it got and in the dwindling returns. But by the same token, I would not call this a hit for Syfy. I think that I think they're giving it a second chance. One, because maybe comparatively to the other shit that's on Syfy, they're just like, "Oh, you kidding me? We die for a 0.1." We haven't had a 0.1 rating since ECW was on here. That sort of thing. But
I wonder about Syfy and their. Well, again, I think you pinned it with, is it David Goyer? Is that his name?
Yeah.
I think you pinned it down to that's probably the cause of this. But this is such a serious show. That's what is like, man. If you're a Flash fan and you're coming to this, good luck. You're not going to stick around.
Dude, Supergirl is. I mean, like, I know Pat hates it because broads, but vaginas, that sort of thing. It's a very Me Too show. It's a very pro woman show. And I love it. So there. How do you like that, Internet?
Shove it.
And all your dislikes. But no, I'm a huge fan of the Supergirl show. I just watched the second to last episode before we went to air tonight. I've also been watching I'm Dying Up Here, which I don't know if you're a huge fan of stand-up, especially stand-up, in the salad days of the 70s, Jesse. But if you haven't been watching I'm Dying Up Here, you really should. It's fantastic.
Duly noted.
This is season 2. It's a Showtime show. But if you've never seen any of it before, go back and watch season 1. Season 2 is actually moving a lot faster, and it's a lot better. But I really enjoyed it. Anyway, I do watch stuff other than superhero shows, ladies and gentlemen, or The Wire. With that being said, would I recommend Krypton to people? I mean, look, if you're into comic book shows, there's no reason not to watch this one. It's, as I said, it's less dumb than Gotham, but it's also more morose than the CW shows. I mean, it's more morose than fucking Arrow. And Arrow couldn't be more melodramatic if they tried.
Oh, man.
You have failed this city.
Ronnie Adams.
Everything is Popeye. All right. So with that being said, Krypton's Cameron Welsh updates Hawkwoman plans.
That's a hard property.
I actually own 2 copies of the Savage Hawkman, which if they're putting Hawkgirl into this, we might have to do that on source material, Jesse. Ha ha ha.
What was Savage Hawkman? Was that one of the ones from Ollie's that you got, like a big trade?
Yeah, it was from the New 52.
Okay.
Let's see. We went into the season with the intention of introducing Hawkwoman, Welsh admitted. We started plotting it out and figuring out how to best use Hawkwoman and how she fits in. But as we got into the nitty-gritty of really breaking the story, we became aware that we really do have a big cast of characters as it is, and we have a lot of story already. No, you don't! That's the problem. You have one story that you stretched for way too long. All right, I'm done with this.
They're planning on bringing Hawkwoman into the Krypton universe?
Yeah.
Oh. See, Hawkwoman was one of the characters from Legends and Flash.
Right.
So, bringing that character into here will be interesting. Just a real quick aside, Adam Strange is from Ran. I think he's a hero on Ran. And I think that the Hawk people, Hawkwoman, Hawkman, have some kind of a tie to Ran and Thanagar, if I remember correctly. But, again, my DC history is... So that's probably how they're going to bring her in. It's probably something to do with Adam Strange. But yeah, man, if you ever have a chance, and I've heard this quite a few times on many a podcast, the continuity of Hawkman is absolutely ridiculous. And I mean ridiculous. Like, you can't even spend an hour and try to explain and have somebody understand what actually is going on and where he came from. So,
like I said, next year in 2019, when since those are the only open dates we have right now, I might insist we do a Savage Hawkman book.
I'm down. I'm down to talk any book, bro.
Yeah, we're gonna do the entire New 52 at some point.
Whew.
All those books that everyone hated, we're doing them all. All right.
About them all. At least we started with Aquaman, or at least that was one of the few beginning ones here, and that was actually pretty decent.
Indeed. All right, with that being said, tomorrow, June 13th, on the Metal Hammer of Doom, we're going to be reviewing Ghost. We've already got up a couple of Metal Hammer of Doom extras, Square Hammer, and From the Pinnacle to the Pit. Go ahead and give those a listen, and tune in late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning for the Metal Hammer of Doom's full review of Ghost prequel. Next week on the Metal Hammer on the Rattlevision Broadcasting Network, on the Source Material podcast, we'll have Fantastic Four, John Byrne's The Trial of Galactus, which is actually the trial of Reed Richards. Damn You Hollywood will be reviewing The Incredibles 2, and the Metal Hammer of Doom will be reviewing the new Amorphous. And then the following week, You Better Run Like Hell, baby, Salvation Run from the Justice League America book. We're going to follow that up with Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, and then finally, 9 Inch Nails, Are You a Good Witch, Are You a Bad Witch, or a Sandwich? And then we're going to look at... Stupid joke.
What is the name of that fucking album? The actual name.
Bad Witch.
Okay, thank you. People are heading to Spotify like, I cannot find anything with sandwich in it.
9 Inch Nails, Are You a Sandwich? What the fuck? I'm going to write Trent Reznor and say that should be his next album, Sandwich.
Please do.
Anyway, so we're gonna review the new Bad Witch album, and then we're gonna play a couple of extra 9 Inch Nails songs for Jesse. I gave him a playlist. I said, pick the 5 you want to talk about. So that'll be interesting. I'll be curious to see which ones you end up liking, or are you just gonna come back and say, yeah, none of these, I hate Slayer.
Yeah. And an unrelated note, I hate Slayer.
Hang on. Let me do it. There's the horsey.
Horsey.
Horsey. All right, and so that's that. The next TV party tonight, if you only come in for the TV reviews, will be will be July 3rd. Myself and Robert Winfrey, presumably, or whoever else wants to join me. Speaking of Too Black, Too Strong, Luke Cage, Season 2.
Oh, that's right. That's going to be dropping here pretty soon.
Yep. We'll be reviewing that on July 3rd, and then the next TV party will be Voltron. It'll be, again, myself and Robert Winfrey, and possibly Robert Cooper. One never knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men. We'll be looking at seasons 5 and 6 on July 24th. And then that same week, ladies and gentlemen, a special Thursday night show here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network, Glow Season 2. It'll have dropped a few weeks prior.
Allison Brie. Oh, my goodness, Allison Brie. Hottie.
Hubba hubba. We're going to be... Hashtag me too.
Hashtag me too. Took the words right out of my mouth.
For the most feminist podcast here in the Radulich Broadcasting Network. Anyway,
we are shooting to at least eliminate half of our audience here. Like, I don't even know if any girls listen to this shit. So
you know what's funny? I've been doing the same shtick for years now, but like when we were on Blog Talk Radio, we had like over half the people listening were girls.
Yep, that's right.
Or at least the bots were. We don't know. Anyway, we're gonna be Sean Comer and I will be looking at Glow Season 2 on July 26th, and that's all the news that's fit to print for the Radulich Broadcasting Network. But I want to make a special announcement. Coming soon, Jesse and I might be putting our heads together, and it's not going to be a structured, planned show. It's going to be, if Jesse and I have a bee in our bonnet, we're going to get together, drink a little whiskey, and, do a little whiskey rebellion. Not making a lot of promises here. I'm not scheduling anything, but I'm just saying, if Jesse and I decide that we got a little something to say, we killed your mother today, we're gonna fire up the old whiskey rebellion and give it to you hard.
Oh yeah. Hey, when is the Legion show? We're gonna be talking Legion at some point. Is that like in August?
Yeah, that's August 28th.
Okay, all right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you want a stark contrast in settings and scenery, let me tell you. Compare Krypton to Legion, and you will have your mind fucking blown. I will tell you that right now.
I've watched part of the first episode, and I haven't gone back to it yet.
Oh my gosh. Have you got to the chattering teeth yet?
I haven't. I told you, I just watched I watched part of the first episode, and I was like, I don't have time for this, and I need...
Yeah, because you need to sit down and really watch that show, because you almost don't want to turn away, because the stuff that shows up on the screen is just absolutely beautiful. And there's so much. Well, we've talked about that on season 1. So season 2 is not much different. I'll tell you that right now. If you are in love with how they portray that show on the TV screen, it doesn't let you down so far as I've seen. I'm excited to talk about it.
When it gets a little bit closer to that show, I'll go back and watch it again. But for right now, I try to. There's only so many shows because of all the podcasting I do that I get to focus on at one time. And so like a lot of the fall CW stuff that I was watching, Roseanne, another thing I wanted to talk about, by the way. All of those things, are done right now, so I don't have that much to watch, but I wanted to get kind of through Krypton and some other things first before I started into another show. I also try to watch things closer to when we're going to talk about them, so they're still fresh in my mind. Speaking of which, we watched the first 2 episodes of Cloak and Dagger.
Yeah, you and your daughter, you said. What'd your daughter think?
She didn't know why the girl was putting the pills up her nose, and I told her that you should never put anything up your nose, you should never smoke anything, or shoot it into your veins. And she said, that seems about right.
Well, good. I'm glad she's listening.
Yeah. So you have to tell me what Kira thinks.
I will. We will definitely have to. I'm definitely going to have. That's another series that I'm going to have to sit down and watch. And I don't know if I've talked to Kira about it yet or not, but I know.
I'll tell you. We in September, I think, is when I have that one planned. Hang on.
Okay, September.
Let me look.
Good deal.
Let me look. Oh, yep. September 11th. I Cloak and Dagger, and I'm thinking, never stinking over here. That if we can get both of our daughters to commit to the entire series, maybe we get them on the podcast.
That'd be neat. That would be neat.
A father and daughter TV party tonight. We'll have to do a special
cool.
start time of 8 o'clock because that's when my kid goes to bed.
Oh yes. Well, yeah. Since Kira was involved, that would be fun.
All right. Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens.
Sounds good. Anything else before I get into closing up shop here?
Nope. Nope. Do the outro. Let's get out of here.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, go give the Rattleitchen Broadcasting Network a Facebook page a like to stay up on top of all the great podcasts that we have to offer. All sorts of great content out there. Just like Mark said, we've got an extra special Whiskey Rebellion may just be popping up right before you even know it. So keep an ear out on that. Wrestling, man, you can tell it's getting late. Wrestling, MMA, we talk movies, TV, comic books, all sorts of fun topics there, and you can check out the Facebook page and stay on top of anything that gets dropped. I think I'm done for the night.
No, you didn't. You got to sign off the right way. When you're done talking, you just got to yell out penis.
Oh, no. Here's my special sign-off for tonight. I'm ready to get out of here. That's Mark Rattlich. My name's Jesse Starcher. Kneel before Zod. Mark Rattlich, take us home.
All right. Be well, be safe, and behave, everybody.